Greetings, YouTube. I have long contended that the third edition weapon, the Spikes Chain, is the dumbest thing to ever have been introduced to a tabletop role-playing game as a melee weapon. And I have had many people argue with me that it is an awesome weapon. But if you look at the illustration as depicted by the artist, each link of the chain has a spike on it, which means you can't touch the chain links. The only place you can touch it is that the two circular rings that are a third of the way in from each end, which means that the weapon doesn't have reach. It only has as much reach as you can hold in those rings, because if you want to have the 15-foot reach, you have to grab it by the end. And you can't grab it by the end unless you slide your hand down the chain. If you slide your hand down the chain, you are going to have no more hand. Not to mention it being a piercing weapon means that even though it is a chain weapon, it could technically be used underwater. It is the absolute dumbest thing ever done. Though I have successfully made my own spike chain, which is exactly what it is, that works. It is just hideously long and dangerous and quite heavy. But it does in fact function as a spike chain because it is a length of chain with spikes that has a handle at one end, so you can actually hold it. Um, but I believe I have found a contender for the dumbest weapon ever introduced in a tabletop role-playing game, and that would be the three-section Naginata. This is from the Pathfinder 2nd Edition book, Treasure Vault, which I recently read. Now, some of you may be aware that the staff is one of the most elegant and versatile weapons that have ever existed. It has existed in every culture. Everybody has a stave of some variety they use for travel while walking and hiking. But they've also become quite popular as melee weapons. And you have the European style of fighting with them, tends to have a one hand in the middle and one hand at the end, so it's kind of a large club that you can poke with, or more of the traditional martial arts Eastern style, which is that you grab it kind of third from each end, and it lets you have a lot of versatility, double weapon. Different styles, still really cool. I've been a fan of staves forever. And of course, you're also probably familiar with the concept of a spear, which is a stave with a dagger on the end. Very simple. But then there's also the glaive, which is a spear with a slashing weapon on the end. And I personally have made a double glaive out of two machetes and a pole. Um, Now, a glaive is an elegant version of a pole with the slashing thing on the weapon. It's a European weapon. I love the glaive. I think it's very cool. But there is a counterpart in Japan known as the naginata, which is, again, a stave with a curved blade. Now, it is, in my opinion, a more elegant representation of a stick with a slashing weapon on the end than the glaive is, even though the glaive is very cool, don't get me wrong. And I have made my own with a machete and a pole. Machetes are very versatile. I have a drawer in my closet labeled machetes because it's full of, you got it, machetes. Um, and when I heard of the naginata and I discovered that there's an entire, martial arts style built around them, that made me smile to ear to ear. It's very cool. And it's also one of the few martial art weapons that has a tradition in Japan of being used by women, because it could be used to help defend their homes or their keeps and things, because you can fight from the top of a wall and reach quite effectively and slash at someone and or stab because it does have a point. Um, and it's and they were trained in it, and it became something that was not considered unusual for them to train in the martial art itself, because it's a beautiful flowing form of martial arts. It is just lovely. I think the naginata is wicked cool. I personally would love to own one. And you also might be familiar, if you're familiar with staves and you're familiar with sticks with points on the end or slashing bits, I also might be familiar with the three-section staff, which I think is Chinese, which is three sections of wood, all about 24 inches, 18 inches long or so, with chains between them. So you have a three sections, which can be folded up to a fairly small package and transported, but when needed can become a deadly weapon, because you can use it from one end, and now you have a two sections, which will let you do very sweeping things, or you can hold it from, even fold it, and then it becomes more of a conventional flail. It's versatile. You can do locks with it. You can do blocking with it. It's a very versatile weapon, though it is much more complex than a stave. It would fall under the category in most games of like an exotic weapon or advanced complex weapon that your average person is not going to be able to know how to use. Okay, so cool. We've established staves, cool. Uh, Staves with blades on the end, cool. Three-section staffs, cool. We're all covered, right? Well, somebody took a three-section staff and they put a naginata blade on two ends. I want I want you to picture that in your head for a second. Three-section stave, and if you have to, go look that up. Okay, you can find pictures of it real quick. Now, stick two super sharp, curved blades, gently, subtly curved, just graceful pieces of steel that evoke flowing water in your mind, attached to either end of those two outer sections of that three-section staff. You have that in your mind? Do you have any idea how, one, incredibly inefficient that would be, and two, how incredibly dangerous would be to you and your compatriots, let alone the enemy? For a blade to work, and I did not really take this into account when I was sketching weapons years ago, you have to have edge alignment. If you don't have edge alignment with a sword, you could be the best, have the best weapon in the world, and you're not going to be effective. When you're slicing at something and you're coming in like this, you're not going to have a good slice. The true masters can slice through, you know, 9 tatami mats with one slice. Why? With a sword? Because they know how to get that edge alignment perfect. So they use the energy to the absolute maximum efficiency. If you've ever seen some masters do that, it'll bring a tear to your eye. It's so beautiful. Okay? Now, you take that super sharp blade, which is really cool, and you put it on a stick, and you put a chain link on it to another stick. Now, when you swing it, there's no edge alignment at all of any kind. And you've turned this elegant blade it into a slappy thing that may possibly break the skin, but isn't going to do what you think it's going to do. Also, you can't stab with it anymore, unless you, of course, you pull it in, fold it up, and then you just have this little section with the sword. So now you've just got a short naginata instead of the wonderfully long, elegant naginata that gives you reach. Yes, this is a contender for one of the dumbest things I have ever seen. I was stopped dead in my tracks when I saw the illustration, because I think I saw the illustration first. Then I read the description because I think the illustration comes first in the book. Um, and I don't think I actually looked at the stats all that closely because they're just kind of dry numbers. Um, I was more interested in see other illustrations. And the illustration of the weapon is it's cool looking. They've got the proportions correct. So like the thickness of the stave to the blade and the chain. Whoever did that did exactly what they were supposed to do. Kudos on them. It looks like it should look from the description. A three-section staff with two curved blades on the end. It's just one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in my entire life. Why do people in high fantasy games keep designing things that are dumb? There are so many cool real-world weapons. Whether you're in the Americas or you're in Europe or you're in Asia, there are lots of cool weapons in the world. Just gives game stats of all the cool weapons and stop inventing things like spike chains and three-section naginatas. It's so dumb. All right, folks. Let's talk about dumb things. Do you have a contender? Do you have a weapon that's more dumb, or at least equally as dumb, as either the spike chain or the three-section naginata? Because I would love to hear it. What system's it in? If I don't have that supplement, I may go get it just so I can experience the awfulness in person. All right, folks, let's talk about dumb weapon designs in high fantasy, because there seems to be an endless supply.